was incredible. An Ontario County nonprofit. Overlook Horizon high-altitude balloons.
3, 2, 1, launch.
Hey guys, good morning. Tori here from Overlook Horizon. We're here. We're back. I gotta get my music up. I forgot to get the music started here, but it's an early morning here on the East Coast. Here, I'm glad. This is how you know. This is how you know you're in the inner circle here. There we go. We gotta get some tunes this morning. It's early. I'm half awake, half asleep, half awake. What is it? I don't know. But it's early, 4:45 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Today is June 13th, 2020. In case you're watching the replay later, I will put timestamps in the description below as well as the pinned comment if you're watching this back on YouTube later. If you're here live, you just gotta wait. You gotta wait with me, and we're gonna watch it launch live today. So what are we watching launch? This is another Starlink mission. We were just here for Starlink 7 just a couple of days ago. It's crazy how fast these missions are coming out. And there's another Starlink launch that's still going to be fit in for June. At least it's on schedule for June. That would be Starlink 9 coming up at the end of June 2020. And then there's a Starlink 10 scheduled for July. So crazy how fast they're putting out these Starlink missions, and it's really starting to show because just yesterday we got a little bit of news that the Starlink private beta testing has started. They are starting the private beta testing for Starlink, so we can't get in it yet for the general public. If you're lucky enough that you've gotten into a Starlink private beta, then we need to talk, but yeah, you can, they have private beta happening, but if you go to Starlink.com, there's actually a form you can fill out to be notified when Starlink beta or public might be available in your area. Starlink.com, it'll ask for your email address and your postal code, and you can find out, I believe, I don't know if that's limited to just the US, but you can check it out. Starlink.com, you can find out when it's going to be available in your area, or get notified at least. So that's what we're launching. Another set of Starlink communication satellites. This is for low latency, low Earth orbit internet communication satellites to provide internet service worldwide, eventually, someday. Anywhere in the world, you'll be able to get internet service through Starlink satellites. So that's what they're launching. And we've actually got a rideshare today, a couple of SkySat satellites. There's 3 SkySat satellites on board today as well. Those are additional communication satellites, a little bit smaller satellites that are part of this rideshare program. It's kind of interesting because there was a Rocket Lab launch a couple hours ago. Let me know in the comments if you saw the Rocket Lab launch. We'll probably play a little clip of it a little bit later, watch some Rocket Lab. But Rocket Lab, smaller rocket, they launched a couple of hours ago, and they kind of had the small sat industry kind of on lockdown a little bit recently, and SpaceX kind of started to see the success of the small sat world here, those really tiny micro satellites that Rocket Lab has been launching, and they were like, hey, we want a piece of that too. So they started offering these ride shares on their Starlink missions. They've got 3 SkySat satellites that are launching today as part of the ride share, and then they have, I forget what they're called, there's 2 other satellites launching on the next Starlink mission as well, so there's another rideshare. But because of the rideshare, instead of 60 satellites today, they're only launching 58 satellites, Starlink satellites, that is. So they'll be launching 58 instead of the normal 60 today to add to their constellation of low Earth orbit internet satellites. So a little bit smaller. And we also have 2 different deployment sequences. So the SkySat satellites, they are kind of your traditional deployment method. They have pusher springs where they will push the 3 satellites off individually. None of that end-over-end flipping. Oh, I left my model upstairs. This is what happens when you have a launch that's at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Forgot all my materials. I have my model, my Falcon 9 model. We were 3D printing on the last one. It's done. I was going to use it today to show the end-over-end flipping. Oh well, I guess I forgot it. But anyways, the SkySat ones won't have that pushing, or won't have that flipping. They will have a pusher mechanism that kind of pushes them off, takes a little bit of extra space for that. But those are needed for a little more precise deployment. And then we'll wait about 14 minutes after that, and we're going to have a later deployment than usual. About T plus 26 minutes, we'll have deployment of the actual Starling satellites, and they'll go into the old end-over-end flipping mechanism. I'm going to have to use my phone again because we left the model upstairs. But it goes into the end-over-end flipping, fling the Starling satellites off into their intended orbit here. So, good morning to everybody. I see all your comments coming in. I was surprised how many people are hanging out with us here today. Like I said, this is how you know you're on the inner circle. You're Team Rocket. If you're watching this 4 o'clock in the morning, the earlier the better. That shows your dedication. Let's see. Andy, is this live? We're live, Andy. We're here. A lot of people wondering if this is live. Some people just can't believe that Tori's up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do this, but I'm here. I'm here for you. Here for me, because I want to watch it, but I'm here with you. Let's put it that way. Good morning, Ron, over on Facebook. How many satellites are orbiting Earth? We currently have, what are we up to? There were 480 satellites. 480 version 1.0 satellites. Is that right? Am I making that up? Yeah, and let me make sure I got my numbers correct here. It's early in the morning. I believe we're at 480. There was an original, oh, that's not what I want. Get rid of this. Where's my Starlink thread here? Originally, there was another, this is also, we should talk about the naming confusion as well. Everybody's telling me what time it is, 2 a.m. Pacific time. UK's here, 10 p.m. 10 p.m.'s not bad. That's not too bad. I could stay up for 10 p.m. Get some coffee. I've not had coffee yet. I was kind of in, this is a weird time for me, 4 a.m. It's like too early for coffee because I might go back to bed after this. I was just in bed an hour ago. I might go back to bed. So I didn't want to crush the coffee. But anyways, so there's a bit of confusion on the naming convention here because this is technically the 9th launch of Starlink satellites. And, oh yeah, that's right. Ron says 540 satellites. Yeah, so there were 540 satellites, or there probably still are 540 satellites, but the very first launch of Starlink satellites was a version 0.9 satellite. Those are actually in the process of being deorbited right now. They're lowering their orbits. I guess it's unconfirmed that they're deorbiting, but they're all getting very low in their orbit, and they've been intentionally firing their thrusters to lower their orbit, so everybody kind of thinks that it looks like they're deorbiting that very first batch of 60. So that puts us down to the 480 number that I was mentioning earlier. So we'll have 480 version 1.0 satellites. That initial version 0.9 is being deorbited, so that'll be out of there. And then after today, we'll be back up to the almost 540. We've only got 58 going up, but about 540 satellites that we'll be at after today, and that'll be version 1.0 satellites. About 600 total satellites, depending on the timing on when the version 0.9 heads deorbits and burns up in the atmosphere. Fabrizio, I woke up at 8:30 a.m. comfy. Yeah, that's not too bad. I know everybody that's at a comfortable time, that's not too bad, although I guess it's the opposite of what we normally have here. The good news, though, is because it's the middle of the night here on the East Coast, we should be in good shape for weather. Tori, do they have humans in it? No humans today. These are communication satellites. These are the Starlink satellites launching to low Earth orbit. Let's see. They put out a re-entry trajectory yet? I do have a hazards map. We can take a look at that. But we're gonna let's take a look at weather here first. And actually, I probably ought to pull up. I don't even have the SpaceX. Let's pull that up. SpaceX webcast up so that we don't miss that. Want to make sure I don't miss that. And let's get our weather up. We'll take a look at weather here for today. Because weather, not looking too bad. Weather's looking okay. So that's what I started saying, because we're in the middle of the night. Weather's looking pretty good for today. It was down to like a 60% chance to go, I think. Do I still have where's my forecast? 70% chance to go. 60% is tomorrow. Tomorrow's 60% chance. Today is 70% chance. So we're looking pretty good here today from a weather standpoint. Ground speed winds, pretty light, 4, 5, 8 mile per hour over on the Cape there. Right in that range there. Upper level winds, also not too bad. You can see they get a little bit stronger to the north, but that's not going to be bad for the Cape. They're actually really light, and you'll pop up over the upper level winds pretty quickly when you're launching the rocket. It'll head up, get over the upper level winds, and then these winds over here won't really be a factor. We'll already be above the atmosphere well before that point. Precipitation, though, that's the big thing, and we do have this bit of precipitation over here, but I think it's going to hold off. That's going to be okay. Remember, this is not like the Demo 2 mission where we were doing this 5 hours early. We're launching in like 20 minutes from now, so this thing here is not going to make it over to the Cape before launch time here. So this will be okay, and we don't have any precipitation that's in the area, none of those afternoon thunderstorms that we always struggle with, so we should be okay for precipitation here as well. The watch item today for the weather was actually cumulus clouds, which I don't really have a good way to show that on screen. I mean, we can look at cloud cover, but it's really hard to see like the depth of that. And actually, if you look over here at the Cape, only 10% cloud coverage right now. So it's barely got any clouds out there right now. And it's going to be tough to see that when they do the webcast because it's nighttime. Do we know where the car is? Says Steve over on Facebook. We do. It's whereisroadster.com. I think you can find where the Tesla is. What's the launch time? You type in, I think I updated the commands, ! launch. I believe it will give you the launch time. There you go. You can also just look at our events list here. We've got our T-minus countdown clock right there. That's roughly it. I'm going to match up the seconds here once they go live, but that's roughly the time to launch right there. So we got about 23 minutes until launch time right now. It'll be at about 5:21 a.m. Eastern time. We've got a couple of commands that you can type in the YouTube chat. So you can type ! Commands to get a list of the commands, but some of them are like ! Launch, ! Booster, ! Weather, if you want to get a link to this lovely weather map and play around with it from Benchu Sky. We also got ! Path that'll show you the flight path. And the big one for the Starlink missions is ! Starlink. Will give you a link to where you can track the Starlink satellites and maybe see them fly overhead for you. You can be notified of when they're going to be flying overhead. I actually found a new website that will tell you when Starlink is passing overhead. It's called findstarlink.com. It's actually kind of a cool website. It's specifically dedicated just to Starlink. The one that I would normally give out is called Heavens Above, which is a great website. Fantastic. They have a mobile app. It's great. So either Heavens Above or this new one I found called Find Starlink. Both of them are pretty awesome. But that new one that I found, Find Starlink, I thought that was pretty cool. I found that after the last launch. Tori, honest question for you. Will these low Earth orbit satellites be a problem for future space missions because they have no steering and become debris one day? Well, the first thing I would correct is they do have steering. So that's not accurate. They do have steering, and they actually have the capability on orbit to do autonomous collision avoidance. So they take a feed in directly from the U.S. Department of Defense's satellite tracking and even orbital debris tracking, and they can maneuver themselves out of the way to avoid a collision with another satellite or any sort of orbital debris. They have a end-of-life plan in the sense that when they're done, just like we mentioned a few minutes ago, the 0.9 satellites, the version 0.9, that was the very first launch, they are being deorbited right now. They are using their onboard thrusters to actively deorbit themselves and dispose of themselves because they are done. They're no longer used. So no, I don't think it's going to be a problem for future space missions. You also have to remember, like this with all Starlink satellites, it sounds like a lot of satellites. They're putting up to 40,000 satellites into orbit someday. I mean, right now we're only at about 500, but someday they want to have 40,000 satellites up there, and people go, "Oh my goodness, 40,000 satellites! So we're just gonna look up in the sky and see satellites." The sky is big. It's huge up there. You're not even gonna barely see them. They're gonna be overhead, but you're not even gonna barely see them. The problem, and there'll be plenty of room to maneuver and do spaceflight. The problem really is with astrophotography and research of the night sky, people that are taking long exposure photographs. That's where this really becomes problematic, because the more satellites you get up there, it's already a problem with satellites, existing satellites, and airplanes that pass overhead. So that can really, both of those things, anytime you have a bright object that goes across your camera frame in the middle of a long exposure, you're going to get a big streak across it. And so now think you get 40,000 satellites up there, you're going to have streaks everywhere. So that's a bit problematic for Starlink. But what they are trying to do is they are adding sun visors to shade. They're basically like, it's bringing its own umbrella up there. So they're bringing visors to shade the rest of the satellite from the sunlight, so that the shinier parts of the satellite don't reflect as much light back to Earth. And they're really trying to actively reduce the reflectivity of the satellites to solve that astrophotography problem and problem for research and things like that. When does SpaceX launch Starling satellites? Every 1 week or a month? They're about, this month we're doing 3 Starlink launches all in 1 month. So we are usually they're shooting for about two per month, but this month we have 3 going on. Is your clock in sync? Yes, that should be pretty accurate right there. About 19 minutes away from launch. It's not up to the date right to the second, but we'll update that and get that down to the second here shortly. All right, let's take a look here. We'll show, we said we were going to show the hazards map, so let's show the hazards map. Where is my hazards map? I think I have it up already. Okay, so this is what we call the hazards map, put together by a Raul Twitter user, which is fantastic. Here's where we're launching from. This is Slick 40. Interesting side note, this will be one of the fastest turnaround times. 2 interesting side notes, actually, now that I think about it. One of the fastest turnaround times for Slick 40. So we just launched Starlink 7 just a couple of days ago. We're launching Starlink 8, same launch pad as last time. This will be one of the fastest turnaround times for this launch pad that SpaceX has ever done. I think it is the fastest on Slick 40. So we're launching from Slick 40 again, south of the historic launch pads here. So Demo 2, where the astronauts launched from, that was up here on 39A. We're launching, there's 2 more pads south of that. Oh, there's actually a lot of pads south of that, but there's another pad directly south, which is Slick 41. That's the United Launch Alliance pad where they launch Atlas V from. And then right below that, or south of that, is Slick 40. That's where they can launch Falcon 9 from. Can't launch Falcon Heavy or Crew Dragon from Slick 40. Only just a regular Falcon 9 launch with either satellite or Cargo Dragon. Can they launch Cargo Dragon from here? No, yeah, they can launch Cargo Dragon from there. Yes. I had to think about that for a second. Yeah, because I watched the Cargo Dragon launch from Slick 40. Will you show the launch video? Yes, we'll see it as soon as SpaceX goes live. We'll have it up here. They're not ready for us yet, but they'll be there. So anyways, we're launching to the northeast here, this direction. We do have our autonomous spaceport drone ship, which is out at sea here, that will catch the first stage booster. This is, of course, I Still Love You, the original drone ship out at sea. The original, I say the original. Actually, I think Just Read the Instructions is the original, but of course, I Still Love You is, well, just the original Just Read the Instructions. There were 2 Just Read the Instruction drone ships. But anyways, this is, of course, I Still Love You that's out at sea that will be catching this first stage booster. 3rd reflight of this. 3rd time this is flying. And this was the second interesting thing I was going to say. No static fire for this launch. Usually, SpaceX does a static fire to test the rocket. They go through pretty much the entire countdown sequence right up until launch. They actually fire the rockets, but they don't release the hold down, so they fire it and leave it held down to the pad. They run it for about 8 seconds, and then they shut it off, and that's like their test run before launch. They've done that for almost every launch, but no static fire, no test fire of the rocket for this launch. This is kind of interesting. We have not seen that in a very long time, so it sounds like they're getting a little more confident in their boosters, and that will help with reusability and quick turnarounds and cost as well. They don't have to waste all the fuel and manpower to do a static fire. So if they're confident enough and they're reliable enough that they don't have to do that static fire, then they can save a whole boatload of money, save time with getting the pad and the rocket turned around quickly. So yeah, no static fire here today. So we also have the Ferry Recovery is unknown, really. We think they're going to recover a ferry. The two fairings, I should say. Two fairing halves. Two fairing halves. We believe they're going to be recovering them because the two catcher boats with the big nets on the bottom, they are out at sea ready to catch the payload fairings, but they've been very quiet about what's happening with the payload fairings. These are reused payload fairings as well. So a lot of reused stuff today on today's launch, but they are hopefully going to try to catch those again today in their big boats. They didn't really say anything last time, so and when they came back into port, you could tell that one of the payload fairing halves was busted up and broken. So it sounds like the last time they were not successful, but they're going to try it again here today. And then the second stage will make a whole orbit and eventually deorbit itself right here. This is the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. After satellite deployment, it'll make it'd probably just be one orbit, and then deorbit itself here, break up in the atmosphere. That will not be recovered. That one just burns up. It's going too fast. Need too much equipment and too much fuel, too much cost needed to recover the upper stage. So they're not expected to solve the recovery of the upper stage here. Does anyone control the boats, or is it fully automatic? There is a crew that goes out there to prepare the boats, and then they have station keeping thrusters, which are autonomous thrusters that keep it in one spot. And then the crew leaves for the actual landing event. So they're miles away for the actual landing. Then after the landing, they have a little octograbber Roomba that comes out and grabs the rocket, secures it to the deck. Once it's safe and the rocket is vented and all the pressures are down, then the crew comes back on board for final preparations before they hook up a tugboat. The autonomous spaceport drone ship does not have its own active propulsion. It has station-keeping thrusters, which are just meant to keep it in one spot. But to actually get back to Port Canaveral, they need a tug to pull it back to Port Canaveral. So they do have a crew out there, but they're not on board for the actual landing itself. Foxy Paws, I haven't slept yet. Went from gaming to Rocket Lab to SpaceX. I know I considered live streaming the Rocket Lab one as well, but I had to find a time to sleep in there. If it was a little closer, I would have considered streaming both of them, but it was just a bit too far away for me. Let's see. What drone ship are they landing on? This is, of course, I Still Love You. Do they use used boost? Yes, today is a reused booster. What is a breakdown of the reused components on this vehicle? So we've got a reused first stage booster. It's the third flight of this booster. Then we've got a brand new second stage, which is typical because we can't reuse those yet. So brand new upper stage. Then both fairing halves are reused. So the two payload fairing halves, that's the nose cone. Those are reused as well. I think half of it was from CRS 19 and 20, and the other half was actually from a different mission. I think it was from 2 Starlink missions. So we've got satellites or payload fairings from 2 different launches, or two different series of launches. Really, they're not a pair together. They don't stick. They don't keep the fairing halves together. They can reuse just half of it. So it looks like SpaceX is going to be live here. We're going to listen in for a bit. I'll be live after launch for a little while. We'll chat it up and probably watch a Rocket Lab replay as well a little bit later for anybody that missed that. But let's listen in and see what they have to say here.
Saturday, June 13th, and you are looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 5:21 a.m. Eastern Time launch from Cape Canaveral Space Launch Complex 40 in Florida. Hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Jesse Anderson, and I'm a lead manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX. You're watching a live webcast for our 9th Starlink mission and our 10th mission this year. It's been just 10 days since our last Starlink launch, which was also from Pad 40. For those keeping track, that's a SpaceX record for the fastest pad turnaround. From launch to launch, we're looking at a remarkable 9 days, 7 hours.
You guys don't want to see me, do you? You want to see this? Let me get myself out of the way. I thought I was out of the way.
And as a reminder, Starlink is a constellation of satellites that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in remote or rural areas where connectivity is limited or completely unavailable. And we have another notable first to mention. Today's mission marks our first small-sat rideshare mission on a Starlink launch. Our customer, Planet, who is the operator of the largest constellation of Earth observation satellites, is sending up 3 high-resolution satellites on this mission. These 3 SkySats will be joining 15 already in orbit, and 3 more will be deploying on a separate Starlink mission later this summer, which will complete their fleet of 21 SkySats. What's really quite remarkable is the contract for the rideshare was signed just 6 months ago. As part of our new rideshare program, we're offering sun-synchronous orbit missions approximately 3 times a year and have a frequent launch opportunities to mid-inclination. For details or to reserve your spot, head over to our website, spacex.com/rideshare. In order to make room for Planet's 3 SkySats, instead of launching 60 Starlink satellites, as we've traditionally done in the past, today we'll be sending 58 into low Earth orbit. Planet's SkySats will deploy in 3 sequential maneuvers beginning at about 12 minutes after liftoff, and the Starlink satellites will deploy approximately 14 minutes later, or 26 minutes after liftoff. Now, we won't see the Starlink satellites deploy today since we will not have ground station coverage at that time. However, we will keep the webcast going until we reconnect with the satellites at about T+39 minutes to get confirmation of a successful deployment. So we're at T-8 minutes and 10 seconds and counting, and all systems are go for an on-time liftoff this morning. If for any reason there is a hold on the countdown today, we do have a backup launch window opportunity tomorrow at 4:59 a.m. Eastern.
So yeah, even earlier tomorrow if there's any sort of scrub, but I think we're in good shape here.
On your screen is Falcon 9. This is our 2-stage liquid fuel launch vehicle, getting ready for launch from Space Launch Complex 40, or SLIC 40. Falcon 9 stands 70 meters tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. Today's flight will be the 3rd flight for this booster. It previously supported our most recent cargo Dragon missions, CRS-19 and CRS-20. The bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage, and if you look closely, you can see the soot markings still on the vehicle from its previous 2 flights. The first stage has 9 Merlin engines that do the bulk of the work to get Falcon 9 off the ground and up into the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere before separating from second stage and making its way back down to Earth for landing. Today, we will be attempting to recover this first stage for the 3rd time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which you can see there on your screen, is out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, about 350 nautical miles northeast of our Cape Canaveral, Florida launch site.
Hopefully we can get clean video all the way to landing.
On top of the first stage is the interstage, which is that black segment of the vehicle. And the reason it's black compared to the rest of the vehicle is because it is unpainted TPS, or thermal protective system, which protects the composite material that the inner stage is made of. The inner stage is what connects the stage 1 to stage 2, and as well protects the second stage's single Merlin vacuum engine during launch. That Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, ignites after the first stage separates, propelling the second stage along with the SkySats and Starling satellites into an elliptical orbit above the Earth's surface. From there, the SkySat rideshare satellites will separate, and about 14 minutes later, the 58 SpaceX Starlink satellites will deploy. Falcon 9 has been loading propellant since T-minus 35 minutes. And as a reminder, Falcon 9 uses rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, as our fuel, and super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, as our oxidizer. Currently, RP1 and LOX are nearly fully loaded on both stages, and LOX will continue to be topped off right until the last minute of the countdown. The stack of 58 Starlink satellites and 3 SkySats are safely enclosed inside of that 17-foot diameter payload fairing that you can see on your screen, which is that structure at the very top of the rocket. This protects the satellites from aerothermal heating, aerodynamic loads, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we no longer need them, and we will jettison the fairing halves while the second stage continues to orbit. The fairing halves we are using today flew on previous but separate missions. One half flew on JCSat 18 in December of 2019, and the other half flew on our first Starlink launch in January earlier this year. Now, we will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today using our recovery ships Mystery and Mischief. There you can see them on your screen. At approximately T plus 40 minutes, the team will perform a poll to confirm if we're all good to make a safe catch attempt. Weather plays a big factor in the go, no-go decision for the catch attempt, as it can impact not only the sea states for the boats, but also the fairing's altitude, position, and speed, which impact how the fairing will fall back to Earth. Now, we've been keeping an eye out on some thick layer clouds for this morning's launch, but currently weather is looking good for T0. The vehicle, satellites, weather, and range are all looking good for an on-time liftoff just about 3 minutes and 45 seconds from now.
So we should be getting strong back retracked right now.
For those of you that don't know much about the Starlink program, our mission is to bring high-speed, low-latency internet to people all over Earth. And every one of these Starlink missions gets us closer to achieving that goal. Some of the most exciting opportunities for Starlink are locations where traditional fiber or cable is simply not practical, such as rural or remote communities. It's also an exciting place for where fiber and cable are impossible, such as aircrafts or cruise ships. This is a big endeavor, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, but today's launch gets us one step closer to these ambitions. On our last Starlink mission just over a week ago, we captured some really cool footage of fairing deploy, which we wanted to share with you today. And there you can see on your screen the fairing deploy. You can see the second stage clearly with the Starlink satellites making their way to their targeted orbit. One of my favorite videos that I've seen so far.
We're going to watch that again. Don't worry. I have the clean video of that I'll put up. We'll watch that full screen after launch.
Go to starlink.com and sign up for updates. We're currently at T-minus 2.5 minutes from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Super chilled liquid oxygen, which, as I mentioned earlier, is our propellant oxidizer. And that's what's creating those white clouds around Falcon 9 that you see on your screen there, and that's when it gets exposed to the warmer ambient air. First stage finished prop loading at T-minus 3 minutes, and second stage at T-minus 2 minutes. And coming up at T-minus 60 seconds, there will be a call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. Then at about T-minus 2 seconds, the Merlin engines will light and liftoff will be commanded at T0. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is still looking good, and the range is green for launch. And as I mentioned, we are at T minus 1 minute and about 15 seconds here. So at T minus 1 minute, we will hear that call out for Falcon 9 being in startup. And from then on, the vehicle will basically autonomously make the decision if we will be launching today.
And don't worry, I'll full screen everything. I'll get myself and everything out of the way for launch here. We're just gonna keep this up.
Falcon 9's in startup.
And there's that confirmation that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Get a
Next
go
up
from the
at
flight
T-minus
director.
45 seconds, we should hear the call out for a go for launch.
So
Please go for launch.
there you go. I think I
And
said
there's that call out for go for launch.
it's launch director, not flight director.
So as we're approaching T0, it is T minus 35 seconds. Let's watch and listen into the nets and watch this liftoff of our
30 seconds.
of our Starlink payload with our planet's SkySats.
We also, on pad 40, on Slick 40, they have a ton of pad microphones that are really great. So we're going to crank this up. Headphone warning for you. Here we go.
15 seconds.
Let's do it.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of Falcon 9 and Starlink Ocho.
T plus 40 seconds into flight, and Falcon 9 has just had a successful
Power and
liftoff.
telemetry are nominal.
A successful liftoff from pad 40 for its first Starlink rideshare, carrying 3 Planet SkySats and our SpaceX Starlink satellites.
Why is it shaking so much?
Next coming up will be Max Q,
Mach 1.
and that is the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle sees, the largest structural load that the vehicle sees throughout ascent.
Max Q.
And there's that call out that we just passed through Max Q. Next up will be 3 events happening back to back, and that will be MECO, our main engine cutoff, stage separation, as well as second engine start, or SES1. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is when all 9 of the M1D engines shut off and slow the vehicle down in preparation for the next event, which is stage separation. And stage separation is where the first stage separates from the second stage, with first stage making its way back to Earth and second stage taking our satellites to their targeted orbit. And then finally will be SES1, which is second engine start, with that MVAC engine lighting up and taking those
Vehicle is following a nominal trajectory.
satellites to orbit.
I thought he said vehicle is falling at
That was
first.
3 events
Vehicle is
happening at
following.
about 15 seconds. Again, that is MECO, stage separation, and SES1.
Yeah, and this may be... A couple people commented how they love night launches and what they look like, and TP Seeker even said the smoke trail with the sun rising should be cool. We may see some awesome photos from launch photographers from this. Here we go.
Stage separation confirmed.
Now watch on the right, you'll see the stiffener ring. There it goes, falls away.
And there, as you saw live on your screen, MECO, main engine cutoff, and stage separation. First stage being on your left screen. On your right screen is second stage with that MVAC engine glowing bright red there. On your left screen, you can see those grid fins deploying on the first stage. Those grid fins help.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Fairing separation,
And
there we
just
go.
had Fairing separation.
look at that view.
We had a successful
here.
deployment of those fairing halves. Let's see if Miss Tree and Miss Chief can make a catch
Vehicle
attempt today.
continues to follow a nominal trajectory.
And as I was mentioning, the grid fins have deployed. That helps guide that first stage back to its landing zone.
A lot of light on that first stage. Look at, you can see the sunlight lighting up the grid fins there. What time, does anybody know what time sunrise is at Cape Canaveral? I don't know, I don't have that offhand here. But obviously sunrise would be a whole lot earlier for
acquisition of signal Bermuda.
A booster that's way up in altitude. I'm curious what the...
Stage 2 is still looking good.
Curious what those launch photographers might see.
First stage on your left screen. And coming up next for first stage, as it makes its way back to Earth, it will perform a couple of burns, the first of which will be the entry burn.
6:24, 6:25 a.m. sunrise. 6:24 it looks like everybody's saying for sunrise at Cape Canaveral. So we're about an hour away from sunrise at Cape Canaveral. So we probably get some pretty good photos of that exhaust trail being lit up in the upper atmosphere, even though the rocket is launched at pitch black nighttime. Being in the upper atmosphere, it's going to hit that sunlight sooner. Those rocket photographers, I'm sure we'll get some pretty amazing photos. Can't wait to see those.
We're getting a nice bright view. I believe that is the sun hitting that first stage on your left screen there. So really, really cool view of that.
Entry burn's coming up here at T plus 647. Should be our entry burn.
Second stage is still looking good. That is on your right screen.
Did you see the Rocket Lab launch? I actually went to bed. I did not watch the Rocket Lab launch, but we're going to watch a replay of that after all this is done. We'll watch it together.
We're just about a minute and 15 seconds or so away from that entry burn beginning on that first stage.
Okay, a lot of debris you're seeing on the left side there. A little bit of ice.
To follow a nominal trajectory.
There's that call out that the second stage vehicle is still on a good trajectory. And again, that first stage is making its way back to our drone ship. Of course, I still love you. With the entry burn coming up here in about 30 seconds or so. Again, if you're just now joining us, what you can see on your left screen is first stage with those grid fins deployed, guiding the vehicle back to its landing zone.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
So that FTS, that's the flight termination system, has been safed, essentially meaning they've shut that off.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
And there you can see that the entry burn has begun. It's lighting up that screen pretty bright there. The entry burn will last about 20 seconds long.
Oh, now we're starting to see the clouds there a little bit.
The entry burn for first stage. We have a really cool view of Earth in the background of first stage. That is an awesome view.
It's pretty cool. We're getting that little bit of
Stage 2
twilight.
Is still looking good. We're just about a minute away from that landing burn.
First stage from the Cape expected.
Oh, look at this. This is what I was wondering. This is why I was asking about sunrise here.
Live signal of the first stage as expected. Coming up here in at about T plus 8 minutes and 21 seconds will be the beginning of the landing burn. Landing burn will last about 20 seconds long, and then hopefully we'll get to see first stage touch down on our drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
We'll see if we
Stage 1 is transonic.
We'll see if we get uninterrupted video here today.
10 seconds after landing of the first stage will be SECO 1 on second stage. So we will have a couple of events happening very close to each other. So we'll listen in and wait for those call outs.
So we'll see, hopefully we can get some uninterrupted video of it landing here today.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn has started.
And that landing burn has begun on the first stage. Again, this will last about 20 seconds long. Let's wait and watch to see if we can land this booster
Stage
for
2
a third
FTS
time.
is saved.
Here we
Stage
go.
1 landing legs have deployed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Clean video. Again.
Wow,
Yeah.
we got a live, awesome view.
Look at that.
And stage
touchdown.
1 is landed. Landing operators proceed to 11.100 on Recovery 1 and ECF 9.
And there, you heard that call out, and you can see on your left screen that stage 1 has landed on Of Course I Still Love You.
Look at that. That's 2
We are
launches in a
waiting
row
for
now.
Stage 2 for SECO 1, which is second engine cutoff. What an awesome view of that first stage.
2 launches, 2 flights in a row
Nominal
now
orbital insertion.
that we've
All
gotten
right,
clean video.
starting TX Prime RF1A on.
We did confirm
Acquisition of signal
SECO
Newfoundland, loss of
and
signal
confirmed
Cape
good
expected.
orbit. So now that second stage is going to coast in this orbit for a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break and return back at T plus 11 minutes and 30 seconds for the deployment of Planet's 3 SkySats.
Yeah, so there we go. We've got, I got to turn their music down because I don't have rights to that. We'll bring our music up, but there, we've got, we're successful orbit insertion at least. We're still not done yet. We've got a couple satellite deployments. We've got our SkySats coming up at 12.5 minutes is when they will be deploying the SkySats. So just a quick break here. Probably don't even have enough time to do any sort of replay or anything like that. So we'll wait until after SkySat deployment, and then we've got like 14 minutes before Starling is actually deployed, so we got time there. But we got 2 launches now. Clean, uninterrupted landing video. That's pretty awesome. I'm excited for that. Hopefully, be nice if we could get that on a consistent basis here now. Tell us about Octograbber. So Octograbber is like, it's like a giant, massive Roomba. There's like a garage on the drone ship. The Octograbber kind of comes out, it goes underneath the Falcon 9 rocket, latches on autonomously, and locks it down to the deck of the ship so that you don't have to have humans on board. They can lock it in place autonomously. It's pretty cool, pretty cool little thing. It's huge. It's enormous. So now, if you want to see where Starlink is going to be, in the YouTube chat, you can type in !Starlink. It'll give you a link to findstarlink.com. Look out for the reply from Nightbot. Nightbot will give you a link to findstarlink.com and to Heavens Above, which will help you find when Starlink is going to pass overhead for you. Any shots of the fairing catch? The fairing catch doesn't happen until T plus 45 minutes. So we actually have more than 35 minutes to go before the fairing halves come down. It takes them a long time to come down and land. So it's not going to happen until at least about 35 minutes from now. Amazing view, loved it. Yeah, it was pretty. I'm excited to see some of the photos for that. Is this live? We're here. This is live. Thought a couple of people confused about why my stream is 9 seconds behind. Guys, don't forget, I have to receive the SpaceX stream, and then I have to rebroadcast it to you. There's latency there. There's a little bit of delay time by the time it comes to me, and then I'm rebroadcasting it to you. It introduces, on YouTube, it's about 5 to 10 seconds delay. On Facebook and Periscope, I think it's closer to almost like 20 or 30 seconds delay. On Twitch, it's very short. It's like 5-second delay on Twitch. YouTube is pretty short, too, these days now. When will the Starlink mission last? Does it last until the I'm not sure what that means, Astro Man. I don't follow that question. What's the lifespan of these satellites? I think they're intended to last for like 10 to 15 years or something like that. They have a long lifespan. Even though the version 0.9 satellites are deorbiting already, they do have a long lifespan. That stage 1 landing is always amazing. I know, right? Oh, there we go. We've got, let's turn up their thing here.
About 30-second increments here.
SkySat 2 separation confirmed.
So we've got,
And there's the confirmation for the second SkySat. And since we saw the first one, I think we should be able to see that second one shortly here as well. And there you can see it.
Look at that. We can see
Very cool views today. Now we just are waiting for that third and final SkySat here shortly.
SkySat 3 separation confirmed.
And there's confirmation of separation of that final SkySat. These three SkySats will be joining 15 already in orbit, and 3 more will be deploying on a separate Starlink mission later this summer, completing their fleet of 21 SkySats. Now, stage 2 is going to continue to coast in this orbit for a few more minutes. During this time, it will start to spin on its central axis, giving the Starlink satellites the momentum that they need to space themselves out over time after they deploy at T plus 26 minutes.
Where's the third one?
And
We can't see the third
earlier,
one.
Because we will not have ground station coverage at time of deployment, we will not have visual or audio confirmation of a successful deploy until we reach the next station at Diego Garcia about 25 minutes from now. So with that, we're going to take another break here and return back at T plus 38 minutes so that we can confirm live a successful deployment of our 58 Starlink satellites.
Interesting. So they are, we'll turn that down again. So they're not going to come back. Satellite deployment is actually going to be at T plus 26 minutes, but they're not going to come back on the broadcast until T plus 38 minutes because they have a gap in coverage there. So they'll find out. They're gonna think they have to like wait until they get to another ground station before they'll be able to confirm deployment. That'll be it. That's kind of interesting. We might get the fairing landing. Yeah, if they're so that is kind of interesting because normally they don't tell us anything about the fairings and their landing attempt, but today, I don't know. They may run out of time. So usually they kind of scoot out of the broadcast right after Starlink deployment. But most of the time, Starlink deployment happens like now. But with Starlink deployment happening later and them having to even confirm it even later than that because of the ground tracking station gap there, they said they're gonna come back at T plus 38 minutes to confirm. So we're going to be pretty close to that T plus 45 minute landing attempt. It'd be nice if they just stayed live just to tell us what happened with the landing attempt. They don't usually, though. So don't be surprised if they just end the broadcast at, T plus 38 minutes and 30 seconds after they tell us that Starlink deployed successfully. Let's see. Never saw that third one. Yeah, we didn't see the third one deploy. Kind of interesting. Mike, what do you use to show the live location of the stages? Well, the live locate that's from SpaceX. That's not me showing that. So that's showing the live location, but that's SpaceX's map. Did they show us the cameras on the boats? They did show it earlier, so they are out there ready to do the payload fairing catch. What's the projected date for total deployment completion? Oh, for like all 40,000 satellites? I mean, we're talking like many years from now. But the first batch, the phase 1, is expected to be done by the end of this year. And after phase 1 is done, they'll be at partial operational capacity. They're actually already at kind of partial operational capacity because the private beta testing for Starlink Internet has started. That was news yesterday, really. So the private beta testing has started. Oh, can we see the third one now? Is this the third? Oh, they went away. Let me back it up. Ready? Back up. Back up. Is this the third one here? I see 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. Looks like we can see all 3 now. Go back to the live view here. Give us an insight as to the size of these Starlink satellites. Well, relatively speaking, they're both big and small. So they're probably bigger than you think. They're not going to fit in your hand. They are like 260 kilograms, I think, is the weight on them. So they're not going to fit in your hands, but they're not the size of a school bus. which, you know, some satellites are enormous and like the size of a school bus. I mean, these are, they have 58 of them, normally 60, packed into that payload fairing there. So I'm not really sure how to give an insight. I don't know the exact dimensions on like length or width or anything like that. How many satellites will be in space at the end of the year? Well, I think they're shooting for somewhere in like the 800 range is what they said was partial operational capacity. But at this rate, if they're doing 2 to 3 launches a month for the next 6 months, what is that? Somebody got to do that math for me. Let's see. You carry the 1, and you do the thing. We get 60 launches each, 2 launches, 120 launches per month, and then we have 6 months. I don't know. It's like 700 or 800 more satellites by the end of the year. Somebody do that math for me. I can't do that. I can't do that live. Come on. So how many Starlink satellites can Starship launch? Starship could launch a lot. I don't know. We don't know. I don't think Starship has officially confirmed. I mean, I think the payload capacity is going to change as Starship develops. But just from a general estimation standpoint, like it's going to be way more than 60 that they would be able to launch. Probably talking hundreds. Math, give me numbers. Shame it's daytime here. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, Starlink pass over the UK. If you got second stage going over the UK here now, which would have your Starlink satellites on them, but they're not deployed yet. So you'd have to wait for the second time around. Let's see. Do we know why there was no static fire for this launch? They did not say why they did no static fire, but the theory is essentially that they're trying to reduce their cost, especially on missions like this, like a Starlink mission. This is there's no paying. Well, normally there's no paying customer, but there are 3 rideshare missions that are launching on board this. So there's a little bit of a paying customer that's paying out for this, but normally they would do that static fire, and it would cost the company money to do all that. It also costs the company time. So this is the Starlink launches. This is their platform to do experimentation, basically. And so they're kind of experimenting with this to see if they can speed up the time that it takes to get a rocket ready to launch again, and also reduce the cost to them to launch a reused booster. I mean, this is the 3rd reflight of this, so this booster would have done a static fire at McGregor, their McGregor facility in Texas, before it even flew any missions, before it was even attached to anything. It does a test fire at McGregor, then they bring it to Cape Canaveral. On its first mission, it would have done a test fire, and then it would have done the actual mission. Then it would have come back. On the second mission, it would have done a static fire, and then the actual mission. And now this is the 3rd reflight. So this booster has already been fired 5 times. So, you know, with that sort of data and reliability already in the books, they're kind of just pushing the envelope a little bit, saying like, all right, well, we've done this 5 times. Like, do we really need to do a static fire again? But they didn't officially say why, but that's pretty much that's the theory there. SkySat saved tons of money on this. They have 6 sats to launch on Starlink rideshare. Costs $6 million. If they go to Rocket Lab, it costs $30 to $40 million for those 6 satellites. Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. SpaceX is kind of trying to undercut on that pricing there, because, yeah, it's a very low cost for launching those satellites as a part of that rideshare. Now, the downside to that is you have to go into the same orbit that Starlink is intending to go into, or roughly. I mean, you can do some on-orbit maneuvers to get into slightly different orbits, but you can't drastically change the orbit with those little tiny satellites there. But you can do some maneuvers, but there'll be some limitations there when you're doing a rideshare and you have to go into the same orbit that Starlink is going into. Why do they not launch on Falcon Heavy? I mean, I think it's a cost thing for the most part on why they don't launch on Falcon Heavy, because these are reused Falcon 9 boosters. Remember, Falcon Heavy boosters are slightly different. The side boosters are relatively similar to a regular Falcon 9, but the center core is very unique for Falcon Heavy, and they have all these. They've got satellite missions, they've got Cargo Dragon missions, now Crew Dragon missions, that they can take those boosters and then reuse them for Starlink missions. So it's really a cost savings for them to just launch them on Falcon 9 with all this reused hardware, instead of having to build Falcon Heavy hardware that they would then have to either have dedicated and ready for Starlink missions, and it would slow down their reusability a little bit until they built that up. So just a cost thing. Plus, Falcon Heavy's cost to launch is a little bit higher, and the payload fairing, you don't really need all that extra thrust that Falcon Heavy would give you, because it's not giving you an increase in payload capacity. You still got the same payload fairing on Falcon Heavy, so you're still getting 60 Starling satellites. So why use the extra fuel and the extra cost, because you're only going to low Earth orbit. So if we were launching Starling satellites to maybe like the moon or to Mars, maybe you want Falcon Heavy, but we don't really need all that. It's just overkill. How do I find the landing barge? Of course, I still love you. If you want to track it in real time, you can go to marinetraffic.com. It's a little bit tricky to find, though, because it's a barge, it doesn't have its own marine tracking because it's not powered. So if you go to marinetraffic.com, you can track the tug that pulls the barge. Let's see. We are coming up on Starlink deployment. Should be happening in about 20 seconds here. Unfortunately, we won't see that deployment because of a gap in ground tracking stations, but they're going to come back in about 12 minutes and let us know. But that should be right there. That should be Starlink deployment. They're going to... Oh, no, they're still playing music. I was trying to listen in. I can hear it. You guys can't. I was going to hear if they had said anything about it, but I don't hear anything yet. Are the fairing catchers automatic like the drone ships? I believe they're mostly automatic, but they do have the fairing catching ships do have a crew on board that could potentially take manual control. But I believe, and I don't think they've really specified this in detail, but I believe they do have some automation to them for lining up the catch. Whether that's full automation like driving the boat, or just like some automation in like, helping to steer, or even just computer guided equipment on there. We don't know the exact details of that, but there's definitely some computer equipment and guiding equipment, because both the fairing and the catching ship have two-way communication between each other to help them steer towards each other. But who actually does the steering, I don't think they've ever told us that. I would imagine... I seem to think that it's still human-driven. I don't think they'd go to the length of having the autonomy on those fairing catching ships, but we could be wrong. Want to know about the boosters that they use on the Starlink rocket? Well, this is a Falcon 9 rocket with Starlink satellites on board. But the booster, this is the third time this booster's been flown. It was reused twice before. So now it's landed a third time. Let's see, do I know? I bet I have, let's see. let's see, this is booster 1059. Just trying to see if I have the previous flights for this booster. Booster 1059 flew previously on CRS-19 and CRS-20. There you go. So that was back in CRS-19 was December 2019, and CRS-20 was just a couple months ago, March 2020. So those are the two previous missions for this booster today. How many times can they use a booster? So, in theory, each booster is designed to be reflown 10 times with minimal refurbishment, and then it can have major refurbishment after that, and it can go through 10 major refurbishments. So, in theory, a booster could be used 100 times with major refurbishment after every 10 launches. We've not gotten anywhere close to that. The most we've gotten so far has been 5 reuses. So this is a 3rd reuse, but the last launch was a 5th reuse and a 5th landing. So that booster, which was 1049, I think, 1049 will be the first candidate, potentially, to fly for a 6th time. Although I think Starlink 9, which is coming up at the end of this month, is also going to be a 5th reflight, I believe. So that booster would also be a candidate for reaching that number 6 milestone. What if the boosters were to run out of fuel? What will they do, like traveling miles from our planet? Well, so yeah, I mean, they're not reaching escape velocity, so the boosters can't leave the grasp of our planet's gravity. So the boosters would never, even if they run out of fuel and can't come back, they're not even orbital. So they're in a suborbital trajectory. It's like throwing a baseball. You throw a baseball, it's going to go in an arc. Eventually, it's coming down. It's not leaving the planet. It's coming back down. The booster's the same thing. It's not those first stage boosters when they separate. They're not going orbital. They're suborbital, meaning they're coming back one way or another, whether they have fuel or not. They're going to go up, and eventually they're going to come right back down because they're not going fast enough to reach orbit. Everybody's wondering about my camera. The camera's okay now. We're in good shape now. I had to switch out the camera body. I actually set this a different camera body than we had for the Demo 2 missions. And the old camera body is it's at Canon's service center right now, being repaired for warranty, under warranty. So it should be repaired for free. But they just got it at the service center yesterday, actually. When is Crew Dragon coming back? Expected to come back in August. We don't have an exact date yet. They're not going to set that until it gets a little bit closer. Crew Dragon has a very narrow wind profile margin for landing. And I imagine they'll probably expand that as the program evolves. But this very first landing has a very narrow wind margin for landing. So they're going to pick a very tight timeline for the exact date that it comes back, but right now they're expecting August, is what they said. They're already scheduled to do some spacewalking, and after their spacewalk at the end of July, then they're gonna start looking at dates to come back. So yeah, it'll be August time frame when the astronauts come back from the space station. Gotta hate that warranty fine print. Yeah, we'll see if they charge me for it, but it's under warranty, so I shouldn't be charged for the repair. Will Crew Dragon be pulled apart for the new capsule? I'm not sure what you mean by that. What do you mean by pulled? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that. Are you ready for the Mars rover launch? I don't know if I'm ready yet. I'm taking it one day at a time here, but yeah, I'll be excited for that as that gets a little bit closer. Oh, Foxy Paws brings up an interesting, what are your thoughts on NASA's Refinement, a crew contract for reusability? I think that's awesome. I figured that was going to happen. We've talked about that a couple times in the past. Like, I figured we'd get to the point eventually where NASA was like, okay, this seems pretty reliable. We'll let you do reuse crew capsules and reuse boosters. But under the initial contract, they were only allowed to fly new boosters and new crew capsules, which was really interesting because Boeing's Starliner was allowed right from the get-go to fly reused capsules. Kind of makes you go, But anyways, SpaceX was not going to do reuse capsules or reuse boosters, but we figured eventually, just from the cost standpoint, that they would eventually go and allow SpaceX to do reuse capsules and boosters. But I figured that would be like after this first batch of 6 missions. I figured they'd go through the first 6. They'd be 6 new capsules, 6 new boosters because they're contracted to do 6 missions in this initial contract. And I figured they'd do all new ones for the 6, then they go to reusability. They actually just announced that that NASA's okay, and they signed off on using reused capsules and boosters, starting with the Crew 2 mission, which is like not the next mission coming up. The next one coming up is Crew 1, starting with the one after that. Like, that's really soon. That's way sooner than I thought it was going to be. Way sooner than I thought. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think that'll be awesome. Especially, like, I think the best part about this is just the cost savings. Like, if you can bring the cost down, I just feel like there's so much more that you can do with space just in general. Like, NASA's budget could be used to not only send astronauts, but, you know, maybe they can use some of that budget for these lunar missions that they're trying to do. The whole Moon 2024 push, they can hopefully use that for, use some of that budget for that instead of having to just spend and waste money on brand new stuff for the sake of brand new stuff. So I don't know if they'll get a cost savings on that first 6 initial missions, because I think they're already contracted under a specific cost. But eventually it'll lead to a cost savings. It's going to lead to a cost savings for somebody, even if SpaceX gets to keep the full boat of money. SpaceX will have the cost savings by having reused, and so they'll be able to do things and develop things like Starship. They can spend extra money on Starship instead of having to build new capsules. Let's see. What I mean is reuse capsules. Will they use new computers inside the new capsule? And do they throw away the computers on board after the first use? No, I think pretty much they're all reused across the board. I don't think they scrap the computers just for reuse. I mean, I think pretty much, because these, like the boosters, I mean, we don't know the specific details for the Crew Dragon refurbishment program, but I'm going to base it on the booster recovery. But the boosters are designed to be reused within 24 hours. I mean, they can't go tearing the thing apart to reuse it 24 hours later. And we haven't seen a 24-hour reuse yet, but that's what they're designed for. So I don't think they would scrub or pull out any of the computer equipment just because. I mean, they have a lot of redundancy built in with their computer systems, and all their computer systems are consumer grade, like consumer level parts. They're not super like radiation hardened computer parts or anything like that. So they're just regular computer parts. But they have a lot of redundancy, so that if one of them is affected by radiation, the other computers can outvote the bad one if it has a bit flip or something like that from radiation, which would be basically a incorrect data value caused by radiation. The other computers, the chances that it would affect all 3 flight computers at the same time are pretty low. So if one of them gets affected, the other 2 can be like, yep, you're wrong, we're ignoring you. Everything is, aside from the second stage, is reused to my knowledge in both Cargo Dragon and Crew Dragon launches. Yeah, I mean, oh, they're back here. Yeah, remember, it's 58 satellites, not the normal 60 that we would have. Oh, you can't hear anything. Sorry, I hit the mute button.
Position of signal, Diego Garcia.
All she said was we're waiting for signal.
Confirmation
Or
of
waiting for...
connection to the ground station.
Starling tension rod separation confirmed.
There we go.
There is that confirmation of the tension rods deployed and the Starlink satellites deployed today. So shortly after they deployed, their solar arrays deployed as well, and over the next few days and weeks, they will distance themselves from each other with that momentum created by the second stage and use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their operational orbit of 550 kilometers above the Earth, and then start beaming down high-speed internet to Earth. As you may have seen during our last mission, we launched the first Starlink satellite with a deployable visor to block sunlight from hitting the brightest spots of the spacecraft. This demo satellite, also known as VisorSat, is just one of the many actions SpaceX has taken in collaboration with leading astronomical groups to mitigate the effects of satellite reflectivity. That first VisorSat has not yet reached its operational orbit, so we are still a few weeks away from seeing the results of that effort. However, we do have confidence in this design, coupled with all the measures we're taking to minimize Starlink's reflectivity. So we plan to equip all future Starlink satellites with deployable visors, starting with the next mission later this month. That will be the 9th flight of our latest iteration of the Starlink satellite design. If you want to learn more about our work with leading astronomers to protect the natural night sky for all to enjoy, you can visit the updates section of SpaceX.com. And now that brings our webcast to a close. If you're interested in getting future updates about Starlink launches, as well as general updates about future service availability, head over to Starlink.com, sign up for updates, and we'll see you at the next launch.
All right, well... As I suspected, they're not going to show us the fairing recovery. We were so close. We're like 4 minutes away. Why couldn't they just hang out for 4 minutes to show us the payload fairing recovery? No dice. Not going to show us payload fairing recovery today. But we should hear. Maybe we'll hang out for a couple minutes. We'll see if they post anything on the Twitter machine. Because I haven't heard anything one way or another yet, but we wouldn't. It's still a little bit early. There's our mission control audio. And meanwhile, in the meantime, what we can do as well is, what I wanted to do is, let's take a look at the Rocket Lab launch from earlier today. Do a quick replay of Rocket Lab. Let's see, where is it here? Because that also happened just a couple of hours ago. So let's see if I can pull that up. We're not going to go through the whole webcast, but we will watch the launch portion of it, right? Who wouldn't want to see the 2-for-1 deal? Watch the Rocket Lab launch. So if you're not familiar, is fairing recovery top secret? It's not really top secret. I mean, they announce it, but I don't think it's very experimental. And SpaceX they have to be very careful with talking about their experimental stuff because people freak out when the experimental stuff doesn't go right. Like, you look at the Starship explosions and things like that. People are like, we just had a Starship explosion a couple weeks ago, like right before the astronaut launch, and people are like, I wonder what the astronauts are thinking after seeing that. And they're like, well, they're probably not thinking anything because that's a completely different platform that has nothing to do with Falcon 9 or Crew Dragon capsule. But the fact that they're so public with it just gets people talking and speculating and things like that. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these companies go through these design iterations that are, sometimes they don't work. Sometimes they do it via computer simulations. SpaceX just likes to try it. Just go for it. So, yeah, they have to be very careful on what they're publishing. I mean, most of the time they'll just publish it and be like, yeah, well, it didn't work out today. But yeah, then you get the headlines that come out tomorrow would be like, instead of like, SpaceX successfully launches 58 more Starlink satellites plus 3 SkySat satellites. The headline would be like, SpaceX fails to recover payload fairing. And they also launched some satellites. But a lot of people focus on the negative. But yeah, the fairing recovery is still very, very experimental. So if they don't get it, it's not a big deal. They're still working on it. They don't have it down yet. But they're trying. All right, so I was just looking at comments here. Let's take a look. Let's go over and see. Let's see us some Rocket Lab. So if you don't know Rocket Lab is a US-based company, but they're a US company that launches primarily out of New Zealand. A US-owned company. It's a US company that flies primarily out of New Zealand, which is where their main launch site is. But they do have a new launch site that is here in the US as well. But they are a much smaller launch provider. Smaller rocket launches usually small satellites, like little microsats and mini-sats. But it also has a really cool launch sequence. I don't know, the ignition of the Rocket Lab rocket, Electron rocket, is like it's very powerful, like a big. So anyways, we're gonna watch that here in just a second. So our fairing catch should have happened just now. Let's listen in, let's watch some Rocket Lab, because I didn't even see this. I was sleeping when this happened. So we wanna watch this, and can't see the T-minus clock. 24 seconds here. So this was earlier today, a couple hours ago. Get myself out of the way here.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Vehicles get back.
Listen to that guy go.
Stage 1 propulsion's nominal.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Well, after a brief hiatus, Electron is back in the skies heading to orbit. At T plus 35 seconds into flight, we're coming up to one of the first milestones of any mission to space, passing max Q. This is the point at which Electron will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic force on its way to orbit. Let's listen into the call from Mission Control.
We're gonna watch this through here. That's how us Kiwis do it, says Scott. I love it.
Coming up on maximum dynamic pressure.
And Rocket Lab actually does a really good...
Pass through max Q.
They do a really good job
Stage 1 propulsion is holding nominal. Stand by.
And there you have it. Electron has
30
cleared
seconds.
max Q.
They do a really good job with their webcasts, is what I'm trying to say. So at some point in the near future, I've been really lacking at live streaming the Rocket Lab launches, but I'm going to try to do some more of those coming up, but they're just sometimes at strange hours. And
entering burnout detect mode.
AOS Chatham Station.
Coming up next is main engine cutoff, or MECO, which occurs when the 9 Rutherford engines shut down after exhausting their fuel reserves. Upon shutdown, the empty stage is jettisoned so that stage 2 can ignite and continue on its journey to low Earth orbit.
30 seconds remaining.
Hey, you think they borrowed this look from SpaceX a little bit?
Speed is 1.6 kilometers per second.
It's almost identical. The little side by side there. But that's good. I love that because I love the SpaceX broadcast. So
10 seconds to staging.
Staging in 10 here.
MECO confirmed.
MECO.
Stage 2 ignition confirmed.
So Looks like their camera feed's a little behind. There you go. There's staging. Man, look at how fast it goes away from that first stage. Crazy with that acceleration.
We've had successful MECO, clean separation of Electron's first stage, and ignition of the vacuum-optimized Rutherford engine on Electron's second stage.
That's pretty cool
We're
view.
approaching T+3 minutes into this mission with fairing separation coming
Fairing
up next.
separation complete.
And Lost in Transition says you should cover the Rocket Lab launches if you can. You could conquer the southern hemisphere.
And there it is on your screen. The fairing has separated, clearing the way for payload deployment, which occurs approximately 1 hour after liftoff.
Yeah, I think we're going to start doing some more Rocket Lab launches coming up here, especially as they're starting to get into the reusable game. And by Rocket Lab's 17th mission, I think they said they were going to start to try to do...
For the next few minutes, you'll be hearing the word nominal quite a bit. The latest call was from Kevin Garcia, our Stage 2 operator. It's one of our favorite words at Rocket Lab, and it simply means everything is going as expected throughout the flight.
By the 17th mission, they're going to actually try to recover their first stage booster. Right now, they're doing some like recovery tests, but they're not actually actively trying to recover it yet. But I think they said by their 17th mission, they're going to try to recover their first stage mission. And this was the 12th mission, so they're only like 5 missions away from performing a first stage recovery attempt.
These are the people you've been listening to throughout the broadcast on the Mission Control Net, and they're monitoring all things launch related from propulsion and telemetry data all the way through to our network traffic. We've heard plenty of updates from George Buchanan, our GNC operator today.
Yeah, and as
the Rocket Lab GNC team are actively recruiting for senior roles in our Photon satellite program. So if you have a solid background in mathematics or physics, head to our careers section at rocketlabusa.com for more info.
And as Ben said there, I guess Rocket Lab doesn't land their boosters. So they don't land them. They are planning to recover them, but not through propulsive landing. They won't use the engines to actually land them like on a drone ship or on land like SpaceX does. Their plan is to bring it back through the atmosphere and then deploy a balloon, which is like a inflatable parachute. And then they will deploy a traditional parafoil parachute. And then they're going to use a helicopter to come grab the booster while it's midair. And then they will take it back to a ship. Or they'll deploy, actually the helicopter leaves from a ship. But I think they're bringing, are they bringing the booster back to a ship or back to land? I think they're bringing it back to the ship, right? I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, they're catching it with a helicopter, and then they're going to bring the booster back with the helicopter. So yeah, no propulsive landing, but it will still be a pretty cool landing to see, especially if they get video of that. Like watching a helicopter trying to intercept that first stage booster. They have a couple of videos of tests of that, and they're pretty cool to see. Those tests are pretty cool. Let's see, did we hear anything about fairing catch yet? I haven't heard anything yet. No news.
Throttling down.
So normally we would hear about SpaceX's fairing catch attempt usually within like 30 minutes.
Battery jettison confirmed.
So that's battery jettison. They have these hot swappable batteries on board that they jettison when those are depleted.
Trajectory continues to look nominal as we hit 6 minutes and 50 seconds into this mission.
What are we looking at right now? We're
Stage 2 propulsion holding nominal.
We're waiting for SpaceX to confirm fairing recovery. We're going to hang out for a couple minutes, but this is a replay of the Rocket Lab launch. It was a couple hours ago.
If you're just joining us, we've had successful liftoff of Rocket Lab's Don't Stop Me Now mission aboard our Electron launch vehicle. We are nearing second engine cutoff with kick stage separation scheduled in about 1.5 minutes. While on this mission, the kick stage is being used in its most basic form to deploy our customer payloads to orbit. However, the kick stage can be adapted to become a satellite in its own right. With the addition of elements like higher performance propulsion, radiation-tolerant components, and solar panels, the kick stage becomes Photon, Rocket Lab's in-house designed, built, and operated satellite. Keep an eye out for our first Photon mission coming soon.
Just trying to see if there was any news on that fairing catch, but nothing yet. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, that's not news. I thought it was news.
The next major milestone you'll hear is SECO, or second engine cutoff. This marks the end of the second stage burn, after which the kick stage will separate in preparation for payload deployment.
40 seconds remaining.
40 seconds.
Guidance is in terminal.
We should be coming up on the end of this here.
Remaining.
SECO confirmed.
There we go.
And we're going to get transfer.
Who owns Rocket Lab?
And there you have it.
Rocket Lab is a private company. They're a US-based company. It was founded by Peter Beck, who we just saw actually in the back there, the back of the mission control. But Peter Beck is the CEO and CTO, I think, of Rocket Lab, who actually has an ownership stake in it. I don't know if we know that, but yeah, it was founded by Peter Beck. He's the CEO.
Even on rideshare missions with multiple satellites like this one. After deployment, the Curie engine reignites, propelling the kick stage to a lower orbit where it will be dragged into the Earth's atmosphere at a much faster rate, leaving behind nothing in orbit but our customers' satellites. Payload deployment is expected in the next hour or so, and we'll share confirmation on our Rocket Lab Twitter and Facebook accounts when we can. A final thank you to all the small satellite operators on
cool little animation there. It shows their kick stage, that upper stage, which has just been separated, and then that kick stage will deploy the satellites, and the kick stage will deorbit, burn up in the atmosphere. How long can the fuel last in a satellite to keep it orbiting over its life cycle? A lot of that depends on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on, I think we're done with this here now, but it's going to depend on the satellite itself. How much fuel can they pack into the satellites? Also depends a lot on the launch provider that they choose to go with for the particular mission, because if you go with a launch provider that can get you into a precise orbit, then you would need to expend less fuel to get yourself into your final orbit. So it's very common for satellites to be dropped off in a parking orbit that's not their actual final orbit, and then the satellites will actually perform the final maneuvers to get themselves into their final orbit, and they have to use their onboard fuel systems to do that. But if your launch vehicle can get you in a very precise orbit that's very close to your final orbit, then the satellite doesn't have to expend as much fuel. Sometimes you even get the launch provider can put you into your exact final orbit, and then you don't have to expend any fuel. And then all of that will contribute to your total lifespan in the end. If you have enough fuel to do on-orbit maneuvers and to deorbit yourself at the end of your mission, you can have a longer lifespan. In brief, when will they activate internet from Starlink satellites? They've already activated it. They're in private beta right now. It is actively serving internet right now. It's not publicly available. Could potentially be publicly available for some people, not worldwide yet, but for some people, by the end of this year or maybe next year, you may be able to publicly start using Starlink in some areas. But right now they're in a private beta. That's already started, so they are serving internet services through Starlink now. I see a rat on the shuttle's last launch, so yeah, we're talking about the SpaceX mouse that everybody was freaking out about. It's not a mouse. It's solidified oxygen coming out of the LOX vent port, which is right above the engine bell. So there's liquid oxygen in that second stage, venting, and it does something called vacuum freezing. Is that the right terminology? That solidifies the oxygen, and then pieces of it can get caught in the engine components. And they also, a lot of times, they evaporate as well, so that mouse disappears, vaporizes. How many Starlink are up there right now? So there's about 600 up there right now, but that also includes the 60 version 0.9 satellites, which are being deorbited. So really, we can just ignore those and say there's about 540 satellites, version 1.0 Starlink satellites that are up there. It's a little bit less than that because today's launch was only 58 satellites, so it's technically like 538 satellites that are up there now. Satellite internet is usually very reliable. Yes, true. That's what Starlink is trying to fix, is trying to make it more reliable. A lot of times satellite internet is very unreliable because of how far away the satellites are. They're in geostationary orbit, which is really, really far away. So you have really high latency times. You also have to have a much stronger signal, and you're more prone to signal drop because of how far away it is and how precise your signal has to be in order to get to that geostationary satellite. Starlink satellites are much closer, so your latency will be lower, your signal strength will be stronger. So that's what they're trying to solve with Starlink satellite launches. When is this project going to be finalized? Many, many years. They're trying to get to 40,000 satellites, and it's going to be years before we get to that. I mean, we're only launching, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1,200 to 1,500 satellites a year is what they're shooting for. And so eventually they're going to have to increase their frequency if they're going to want to get to 40,000 satellites, because otherwise it's going to take them 40 years to get there. So, but yeah, as of right now, it would take them 30 years to put all the satellites in orbit. But hopefully they can start increasing the frequency. When Starship comes online, they can start doing more satellites per launch. So they want to try to get to 40,000 satellites. Why 40,000 satellites? Good question. But basically, you need thousands of satellites for low Earth orbit internet services, because those satellites, being geostationary satellites, stay overhead. So if you've got your planet here, I'm going to use my white balance card for this, but your geostationary satellite would be up here, and as the planet rotates, this rotates with it, screwing up my lighting here. Let's see, that's because I'm on auto mode. Why am I on auto mode? It should be here. Okay. So as your geostationary satellite rotates or orbits, it's orbiting with the Earth. So in low Earth orbit, though, the satellite's got to travel a lot faster in order to stay in orbit. So the Earth is rotating, but this is orbiting a whole lot faster. So in order to stay connected to the internet, you have to have another satellite following it right behind it, so that you can, as this one passes overhead and goes by, you can connect to the next one. And that goes by, and then you connect to the next one. They're only overhead for like 5 minutes. So each satellite, like 5 minutes, then your next one, and the next one, and the next one. So you're just constantly connecting to new satellites. So that's why you need a lot of them. The more you have, the lower you can reduce that, the more you can reduce that latency, because you can always connect to the strongest satellite. The satellites can communicate with each other to route your signal around the planet. So you can start to lower your latency with the more satellites you have. How did you fix the camera? I had to get a different one. They sent the other one to the warranty repair department. How many are they planning in total? Up to 40,000 satellites, yeah. How many can Starship launch? I don't know the exact number, but it would be a lot. We're probably talking like hundreds. in a single launch. Is this 5G? No, this would not be 5G. 5G is a cellular service based on cellular towers at ground level. So this is not 5G service. This would be satellite internet service with speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second. But it's going to be interesting to see what the operational capacity of that is, because each satellite can communicate at about 20 gigabits per second total throughput. That's not per customer. That's total throughput for the entire satellite. So now each customer that's connecting to that one satellite is another reason why you need 40,000 satellites. But each customer connecting to that satellite is going to take up a bit of that bandwidth. And so you start to chew that, if you have millions and millions of people, you'll start to kind of clog up and bottleneck that bandwidth a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that or how they can keep up with that. But they're supposed to be offering speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second internet speeds for the average person at home. So it was the camera, not the software. Yeah, it turns out it was my camera that was bad. I had to send it back to Canon. They're fixing it now. But is it possible included in the 5G framework from a communicate? No, I don't think it is. Did they purposefully not darken their first set of satellites just to get media attention? No, I don't think they did it for media attention. I think it was a surprise to everybody, actually, as to how bright they actually were, including SpaceX. So no, I don't think they did it for media attention. I think they would very much like to not have that media attention. Cost for Starlink going to be per month? Yes, I believe so. They put out some costs. I don't remember what the exact cost was, but it was less than $100 a month that they were at for Starlink internet. This is US dollars. So I wanted to say it was like $60 a month that they were aiming for Starlink. And you blamed Windows 10. I hope. Yeah, I know. Well, I did think it was Windows, but turns out it wasn't. Turns out it was my camera that was bad. So, well, I guess at this point we haven't heard anything about Ferry Recovery yet. I don't think. Yeah, nothing yet. Yeah, just trying to check my notifications, see if we heard anything. Nothing on payload fairing yet. So I guess at this point we're probably gonna call it a day for us here, and we'll hear more on the Twitter machine a little bit later on whether or not they were able to recover the payload fairings. Usually, well, we may hear more. Worst case scenario, when they bring them back to Port Canaveral, we'll find out, which is what happened on the last time. They didn't announce anything, and we had to wait until they came into port and people could actually see it. And then we found out that they did not recover them, or at least they recovered them, but not in the net. One of them was very broken. So, yeah, Fritz46 says this usually means that they have to go fishing. Yeah, usually when they're quiet like this, it means that they didn't successfully catch it, because if they successfully caught it, usually they would be quick on the trigger for letting everybody know that they successfully caught it. But we've not heard anything, which usually is not a good sign. Usually means that they didn't catch it. They had to go fishing, as Fritz says, which means that they landed in the water and they have to pull them out of the water to bring them back. Which they can reuse them if they pull them out of the water, assuming they don't break in half like the last one did. But yeah, they would be all over it. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, I think at this point I'm gonna wrap up here for the day. Probably gonna try to go get a little extra sleep before I have to start my day, because being up at 4 a.m. was pretty early. Might have to maybe take a nap. I don't know if I could go to sleep now, but might have to take a nap later. Be all about the Snap. How do the fairings decelerate? They have a parachute. They parachute themselves into the catch net, the boat with the catch net. So that's how they decelerate. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna go try to see if I can go back to sleep. I don't know. It's kind of now we're in that weird time. It's like 6:30 in the morning. Like I could get up at this time, but the fact that I got up 2.5 hours ago we're in a weird time for me. But all right, rewatch the Rocket Lab launch. We just watched it. You missed it. We replayed Rocket Lab already. So that's it. I'm gonna end it here. And I will be back. We'll be back again for another launch. I think our next one is going to be the next Starlink again at the end of the month. Although we do have a GPS mission from SpaceX that is, I think it's unconfirmed right now. Let me just look real quick for a date. Do we have a date on that? We also have potentially a Starship hop, maybe towards the end of the month. Yeah, I think it's either going to be the Starship hop or the next Starlink mission that we're back here for. So we'll see. That Starship help will be pretty exciting. But all right, well, that's going to do it for me. Thanks everybody for hanging out with this early morning. I know for a lot of you it wasn't early, but it's early for me. So I'm going to call it the early morning. So thanks everybody for hanging out with me this morning. If you want to chat more with us, you type exclamation point in the YouTube chat to join our Discord server and chat it up with us afterwards. We do a whole bunch of chatting about space flight and even non-space flight stuff like 3D printing and Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. So if you want to chat it up with us a little more, type exclamation point Discord in the YouTube chat, and Nightbot will give you an invite to come head over to our Discord server and you can chat it up with us some more. So that's it for me. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon, and I will see you guys on our next live stream. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you later. Goodbye.